really serious funding issues in defense of the Ukraine. And my question really is sort of twofold. One, do you support spending more funds to Ukraine? And second, do you see a way to override the Speaker of the House so they put it out on the floor so it gives a vote up or down?
There are ways to allow something to go to the floor in a discharge position. So we'll look into that when we get back into DC. There are challenges either way. As I said, I voted for HR 2, which was a border security law. We had an opportunity to have almost all of HR 2 in a continuing resolution, which I think would have passed, and that was in September. It was one of the things that led to Speaker McCarthy, receiving a motion to vacate, which my personal opinion is, not from the Speaker, not from leadership, is that it was reckless and absurd. You don't oust your Speaker. And who is an effective Speaker? We had passed 7 appropriations bills under Speaker McCarthy. We have passed no appropriations bills since then. And when you have a small majority, it's difficult. We're all different. We all represent different districts. Back to your question, we all represent different districts and different makeups in our district, and so it's challenging. It's like when I'm from a family of 8 kids. To get all 8 kids to agree on something, like, where are we going to go for ice cream? We didn't go on vacations, but I'm trying to think, are we going to play football? Are we going to play baseball? To just agree on something, it's hard to get everybody to agree on something. So when you have a narrow majority, it's a challenge and it's difficult. When it comes to Ukraine, first and foremost, I think when we're involved to the level, even without boots on the ground, and I think that almost everybody in Congress would agree that we do not want American boots on the ground in Ukraine. I think that would be bipartisan, that almost everybody would agree with that. But I also, and what President Biden has done to this point, I would agree with, except for the speed. Where I have criticism of the president is that he didn't make a nationwide address. Not in 2022. In 2023, he made comments during his State of the Union, but he really didn't discuss the necessity or the rationale for being involved in Ukraine in any level until Hamas invaded Israel. And I think in the absence of a nationwide address, and then no one else speaking, so either Majority Leader Senator Schumer, or at that time Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy, with no one else in a position of authority in federal government speaking. We spoke individually, we spoke in groups, but without individuals speaking in a broad nationwide address in prime time on why it's a national security issue, why the United States needs to be involved in Ukraine. I can individually or in groups explain that to people, but it doesn't carry the same weight, and it doesn't get dispersed to people on why we should either fund them militarily, what's the risk, what about our 1994 Bucharest Agreement with Ukraine, that we would help protect their independence and their sovereignty if they gave us nuclear weapons. What does that mean for energy in Europe? What does this mean for NATO? Not NATO expansion, but what does it mean for NATO? What does Putin really want? And I think Vladimir Putin has told us what he wants, and it's not to stop at Ukraine. So I think, I have criticisms over the speed at which things have done, the slowness. We've eventually agreed to send weapons or to send parts or planes, but the speed at which we respond to those may have caused this war to have been lengthened. So it depends whether I would vote for it or not. For funding for Ukraine depends upon what it's packaged as. So if there are things that I cannot vote for, so in any bill you have to look at what the bill is and what's packaged with it, or what amendments get put on it. We sometimes have amendments that are very onerous, or things that I can't support or don't support. and then that becomes problematic. So I think it depends upon what it's packaged with, what happens to it. And remember, we're not just in one conflict now. Although we don't have boots on the ground, we are providing intelligence, we're providing arms, and I think another thing that people don't understand is that a lot of the arms that Ukraine purchases are purchased from the United States. And we have the Iowa Army ammunitions plant in Iowa, in our district. So it's something that in some ways you could say benefits Iowa. Not that we want to go to war so that we produce arms and ordnance, that is not what I'm saying. I am not saying to go to war, but we have conflict in Ukraine, we have a conflict in Israel, and we have the Red Sea. What's happening in the Red Sea? And for all of those reasons, we need to have munitions and ordnance, and there has been a pipeline issue as well too. So I think it's complex. I think it's difficult to talk about in a soundbite, and I think that American leadership is necessary to keep peace around the globe, but we have to be timely, we have to be responsible, and we have to make that case to the American people. And so I was happy that President Biden did so in October when he spoke about the context of Hamas invading and attacking Israel. But I also think an address earlier in 2022 really would have helped for that vacuum not to have been filled with other places. So let me think.